Hey, Mick, I'm going to wind up the Q&A because we're getting late. It's getting later really quickly, so and we want Oisin to say a few words as well. So, Mick, and there was one other hand there, yeah. So make it quick. The party is right.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to make one comment. Is that very loud?
No, it's grand.
Okay, I just wanted to make one comment and one quick question as well. The comment just relates to two aspects of the PAH that I think are particularly interesting and useful for us to think about here in terms of the right to housing and in terms of social movements in general. The first aspect that I found really inspiring from what you guys were saying was that it's a very person-centered process. It's not a movement that in any way treats housing as an ideological issue or as a political football or as an attempt to gain traction among the population or build a particular idea. Although it does change society, it does so in a way which is very centered on human beings and their experience in a very holistic sense that came across very, very strongly. And I think that's something really, really worth reproducing. The other thing, which is a bit more tricky, that I find really inspiring about the PAH is the way it combines different types of political practice that maybe we don't combine so much in Ireland. So, I feel in Ireland sometimes you have, say, organisations that do a lot of policy work and advocacy work. So they're drawing up legislation and then lobbying the government to have that legislation adopted. Then you have other organisations like community development organisations or NGOs, and they're dealing with people's everyday problems, supporting them in relation to education or housing in many instances, or addiction or employment. And they're kind of part of the person's everyday life and very rooted in the neighbourhood and the community. And then you have activist groups or social movements that are very focused on protests. Protests and education and media work. That's, for example, Housing Action Now would fit into that category. That's primarily what we do. So we get people together on the street and we try to raise an issue, or we're online or in events like this where we're talking and developing shared understandings and analysis. And all of those three different things and three different types of work are extremely important. But I think too often maybe they're kind of siloed, they're kind of happening parallel and somewhat separate from each other. And it seems to me that none of those different approaches has been capable of generating the kind of momentum and energy and organisational capacity to bring around the changes that they're trying to bring around. And what I love about the PAH is that it kind of cherry picks the best and most effective bits from these different ways of practicing politics and trying to bring about change and combines them in one organisational form. So the assembly of the PAH in a particular city is very much embedded in people's very practical day-to-day challenges in terms of access and housing, be that in the courts or negotiating with the bank or whatever. At the same time, they're developing policies and legislation, as we've seen, bringing that to Parliament. And then at the same time, they're bringing people together to go onto the streets and to bring the fight to the banks and to the government and so on. So that by putting those three things together, you end up with a process in which the kind of, the politics of the legislation, the analysis, the education, the media work, and the more on the street type stuff is brought together and connected with people in a way that's very much embedded in their everyday life, in their community, in their social relations. And that's something that I think is really inspiring and would be really worth considering how to do that. Then the question very quickly is that you talked a little bit about the impact of the mortgage rip-off on migrants, and I wonder if you guys would say something about the role of migrants within the PAH. So I imagine if it's difficult for people with Spanish citizenship to talk about their mortgage distress and to challenge it because of the feelings of shame that you mentioned, it must be even more difficult for somebody who's arrived from another country and is maybe experiencing racism and other forms of oppression. And also maybe if you'd say something about the role of women in the PAH, because I have watched a lot of PAH videos like the ones you've shown on YouTube and noticed that it seems to be a space that's very empowering for women and where women take a very clear and strong leadership position.
Could you hold that for a second? There was a final question there, was it? We'll take the two questions together if you don't mind. I'm concerned about time. I don't want people leaving before we finish.
Thanks very much. How are you, Shani?
How are you now?
I go back to about 40 years in housing. My name's Omar, and I was involved actually in the Ballymore Regeneration Programme. And I was just listening to what's been discussed, I could see certain similarities. You, in Spain, you had a problem to resolve. And so you put together structures to help you resolve that. And particularly you kind of look at the people who are directly involved. But in Ballymore, which had, I think it was 2,500 dwellings, around by the size of a town here in Ireland, we treated it more or less in the same way, in that we had to bring the people with us, an issue to resolve, housing. And so we brought the people together, always included the people in our discussions. And I think that's absolutely brilliant. But the question I want to ask, if you don't mind, what is the role, if any, of the trade union movement with PAH? Do you have a role for them? Is there cooperation with the trade unions? As in here in Ireland, where the trade union members, don't forget, are addicted. So do the trade unions take a stand on that and cooperate with PAH?
Okay, so
the role of migrants, the role of women, the role of trade unions.
Migrants, women and trade unions.
I go for unions first. Actually, unions are quite supportive of the PAH. Now, all unions. Actually, for example, in Valencia, our assembly takes place in the seat of the teachers' union. Okay, and when we collected that 1.5 million signatures, about a third of those signatures were gathered by unions. All unions, teachers, healthcare, metal, everything. So we rely significantly on unions because almost the very few, maybe in Madrid and Barcelona, they raise enough funds by selling merchandise and donations and that to pay rent for a local to have the meetings. The rest of the assemblies, we are getting together in schools, in unions, in churches, in squares, and in leisure organizations like neighbors associations and stuff like that, and we pretty much rely on the generosity of other social movements and other people. So the answer is yes. We have very close ties with several unions. Actually, every time the teachers union calls or makes a rally to demonstrate or protest against the cutbacks, we have our own group rallying along with them. Also, the healthcare union, we do the same, and algún otro sindicato así muy. Yeah, and CGT, which is a general union. So yeah, we really rely on unions and
every
with
time
help.
we need a place where make a meeting or an assembly, unions give us her locals to do this.
Yeah.
And we on Thankful Act we support them too, because we are fighting for
Workers.
for housing action, and they are fighting for other rights we have to fight for all the rights.
Mhm.
And it's more or less one of your questions that you say before, that we support them we support the healthcare, we support the teachers, we not only do housing things.
Yeah, and about immigrants, I am an immigrant myself. So, but fortunately, I am native Spanish speaker, so I didn't have that language barrier. But and it is obvious I am light skinned. But when I go to negotiation, I have been in offices, bank offices, with guys from Ecuador, where the guy from the bank ends up the conversation yelling at us and telling us, "You brownies, get out of here." And I almost threw my computer into his face when he said that. I said, "Well, you're not going to say that again because I'm bringing in the police." And so we have situations like that. With the African immigrants, we have really, really nasty situations because not only they don't speak Spanish.
3 months ago, we had a case with
Solomon. Yeah,
that
Solomon.
he's from Senegal and he only talks English. And we talk English and we support him. But he didn't know what they were singing. He didn't know anything.
And we stop in extremis because just 1 day before Solomon's eviction, we got to the courthouse with proof, and we brought a letter to the secretary of the judge, stating that the whole process was done with well, it's a legal term that the process is defective because the person has not been able to understand and the state has not provided a translator. So since that is a right of a fair trial and he was not being given a fair trial, we managed to cancel everything. We had the foreclosure started all over again. Well, first of all, the eviction stopped and the foreclosure process from scratch all over again with a translator and everything. So at least Solomon was getting a fair trial.
That gives us time to study what more we can do.
Yeah.
And I have a case of Bankia that he's from Pakistan, and he came the first time so frightened and he couldn't speak. And now he's singing his lesson, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, and now he's telling us that he wants to make a group for Indian and Pakistan people to translate and to help them.
Actually, it was I was lucky to be when Solomon arrived to the assembly. I was lucky to be by the door, and when he started, mumbling Spanish to ask for help, and I went towards him and I said, "Do you speak English?" And he said, "Oh yes, please help me." So I took after him and then, "Well, tell me what's going on." And he brought everything. I said, "Okay, don't worry. This has a very easy solution because just for the issue of the fair trial, it has to be started over again." And within 3 days, Solomon eviction was stopped. And well, thank God I was there in that assembly and just walking by when I listened to him. But anyways, when people that don't speak Spanish arrive to the assemblies, at least in Valencia, everybody either looks for me or for Jenny or 2 other fellows that are more fluent in English and that can help people. But that also is happening with people from Arabic countries that speak Arabic, well, mostly from Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria, and all that. That they are forming groups, and usually one that is fluent in Spanish comes to the assembly with the rest and support themselves and sort of educate each other, and they end up doing pretty well.
This is the first of our movement, teaching others to do the same that we do. In another language, in another task, you can do everything you want. you feel you're better putting stickers on the van, do it. you are good on networks, do it.
Yeah.
Do what you want, but you have to feel comfortable with what you are doing, because you are going to work happy and you are going to supporting happy other person who is in bad situation.
No, the girl part, Jenny. The girl part.
¿Eh?
Lo de las mujeres.
I forgot.
The gender.
I say always that PAH is a woman movement, because when a woman comes the first time to our assemblies, principally she comes because her husband feels guilty and feels shame for big and for show publicly that he failed and he cannot support her family. That was her task and his task, and he couldn't do it. And women take the riddles and came to the assemblies and asked to us, and they are the first that if you say, pick this, go and pick this, and you have to go to bank and present this document or do all that have to do with all the power. And now they are able to support all of the house that is on ruins and impulse her husband.
Okay, just about to. Thank you very much. You can see these people could talk for Ireland. As we
love our
ourselves. Anyway, it's been really interesting, but Oisin is just going to wind up for us. And by the way, if anybody is in a hurry out, take one of the books and leave a tenner.
Well, that was mainly what I was going to say is thank you all very much for coming. We'd appreciate it if the book is incredible. It's well worth the read. It's well worth even thinking about and applying it to what you want to be doing. We did spend a bit of money on this event, so if you don't have the money for a book or something, we'd really appreciate a donation. There is a market price for the book, which we don't condone, but there is a solidarity price that is slightly higher. So we'd advise you to get that one, but if you respect the market that much, go for it. We're all going to be heading out to the Hop House after this. It's just on the street, so we can get a couple of drinks there if you're interested. And I'd just like to say that I'd really like to thank the PAH for coming here, and I just think listening to Jenny and Javo speak, it's an incredible experience. They've come through an incredible journey, individually and collectively. And I mean, the proof is there. They say what they do what they say. It is a personal struggle, it is an emotional struggle, but it is happening every day. They will be here. They will be in Ireland tomorrow, but they will be in the PAH. They will be fighting for these collective rights for housing, and this isn't going to stop, because their country, their homes are being destroyed, and they're there as well. And they're there to spread that very powerful message that people power can work. So I'd like to thank you all for coming, and I'd like to thank Jenny and Javo very much.
We are no longer assemblies saying, sí se puede.
Sí se puede.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you so much.
How you doing, love? Where are you? Are you over in Moonies? Okay. Do you know where the hop store is? The hop store.
The hop
The hop house. Do you know where the hop house is? Hang on. This is where they're down. I'm just pulling it out now.
It's just down the road and on the left. Can you see? So, do you know the old Shakespeare pub? That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's down the road here on the left. It's the old Shakespeare. Yeah, yeah.
Is that where you are, love? You're in the Shakespeare. Okay. You're dead in the pair of minutes, okay? Grand, see.